Welcome back to your Dutch language journey. Translate the following sentence into Dutch. Tomorrow, the man is going to bike to Amsterdam.
Morgen, de man gaat fietsen naar Amsterdam.
Sorry, that's not correct. The correct answer is: morgen gaat de man naar Amsterdam fietsen.
Okay.
Would you like to continue?
Okay.
Please translate the following sentence into Dutch. I think that the man is going to bike to Amsterdam.
Ik denk dat de man gaat naar Amsterdam fietsen.
Sorry, this is incorrect.
Wat?
The correct answer is: ik denk dat de man naar Amsterdam gaat fietsen.
But why?
Sorry, I'm just a language app. Would you like another sentence?
No, thank you.
Hallo allemaal, Dutchies to be! Well, I hardly ever do this anymore on my YouTube channel, but today this video is gonna be in English because I'm gonna talk about something very, very important also for beginners who just started to learn Dutch, and I thought maybe it's better to do this in English so that everyone can understand me. And I want to welcome all of you again, my dear Dutchies to be, and for the new viewers I shall briefly introduce myself. Hoi! Ik ben Kim en ik ben jouw nieuwe docent Nederlands. So I am Kim and I am your new Dutch teacher. Yeah, so today I'm gonna cover a couple of things about Dutch verbs, and I made plenty of videos about Dutch verbs and how to conjugate them and different kinds of verbs. I made like, I don't know how many videos about verbs, but some basic principles I've never really actually explained. So today we're just gonna do that. And during this video I will also refer to earlier videos of mine because this is just a general video into the basic principles of Dutch verbs, and I made plenty of other videos that go more in depth per topic. And what I also did is I made a big fat Dutch verbs course. Because yeah, there is so much to talk about, there's so much to learn, and there's so much to practice with that I bundled everything into a course with over 35 classes covering basically everything about Dutch verbs, from the essentials to the more difficult topics. So it's for everyone, it's for beginners, it's for intermediates, it's for advanced students. So if you're interested in learning more or practicing more also, then check out the link in the description that will bring you to the curriculum of the course. But for now, we go back to the principles. First of all, in Dutch we call a verb een werkwoord. Het werkwoord. So what does this actually mean? This means it's a werkwoord, like a work word. Yes, a word that refers to work, or more specifically to an action, because most of the time, not always, but most of the time, a verb is indicating some sort of action. So in Dutch we refer to this as a work word. Very clever, don't you think? Then if we want to refer to a verb in its entirety, the whole verb, we can say het hele werkwoord. But most of the time we call this the infinitive in English, and in Dutch, infinitief. In English, usually you put to in front of the infinitive. For example, you have to bike, to eat, to drink, to walk. When we translate these to Dutch, it is fietsen, eten, drinken, lopen. So usually most of the Dutch infinitives end on en. That's how you can recognize them. However, there are two things to say about this. First of all, there are a couple of exceptions that don't end on en. For example, zijn, gaan, staan, slaan. And there are a couple more, but I cannot think of them right now. They only end on an N. The second thing is that if we conjugate a verb in Dutch for a subject of the sentence that is in a plural form, then the verb has the same form as the infinitive. So first, conjugating a verb. What is that? And what is the subject of a sentence? Maybe you also don't know that. Well, okay. If you want to make a sentence in Dutch, and in most languages I think, you actually only need two things. That is a subject, that is someone or something that does something usually, and you need a verb. So we had 4 infinitives, and let's make 4 sentences with that, with 4 different subjects. So 4 different kinds of actors. And we're going to use plurals this time, just to start. For example, we can say, de mannen fietsen. So de mannen here is the subject. In Dutch we call this het subject or het onderwerp. De mannen, plural, fietsen. That is now the conjugated verb. This is not the infinitive. This is now conjugated. But it still has the same form as the infinitive because in Dutch all the plurals in the present tense, not in the past tense, but in the present tense, have the same form as the infinitive. So you don't see a difference now, but later we will see that there's going to be a difference if we're gonna have a subject in a singular form. So we always have to do this. If there's one verb in a sentence, we have to conjugate it so it matches the subject of the sentence. A verb has to always match the subject. And conjugating a verb in Dutch is called een werkwoord vervoegen. So the conjugated verb, we can call that het vervoegde werkwoord. And usually we refer to this also as the persoonsvorm, the person form. Hey, this is also really smart to call the conjugated verb the persoonsvorm. Why is this so smart? Because often the subject is a person, so the verb we call persoonsvorm is the form that goes with the person, that matches. Yeah, so de mannen fietsen. We had the other verb eten. Well, let's make now a subject for animals. For example, de katten eten. We can also use a pronoun for a subject, for example, ze, to refer to they. More people. Ze drinken. They drink. Or another pronoun for plural is, for example, we lopen. We walk. Yeah, so these are very basic sentences. We only have the subject and a verb, and that's it. And in these sentences, the subjects are either people or animals. But of course, we can also have a subject that's a thing, an object, or sometimes even, for example, het. If we have a sentence like het regent, it rains, then het is the subject. We won't go into this right now, but I just wanted to let you know that not always a subject needs to be a person. Well, let's go one step further. What happens if we turn these subjects from a plural form into a singular form? So van het meervoud naar het enkelvoud. One person. Well, very briefly, because I already made a video about how to conjugate verbs into the present tense. Now I'm just gonna say a couple of things that are important. And if you want to learn more, you can watch this video. But the first thing that you always need to do is find the root of the verb. In Dutch, we call this the stam. Stam is literally root. Or we call it the ik form, because it's always the form that goes with ik. And in most cases, you make the stam, or the ik form, by subtracting the last part of the verb, en, most of the time. And then you get, the stam, okay? So it's not that hard. For example, fietsen becomes fiets, drinken becomes drink, and then eten becomes eet, and lopen becomes loop. So when I say these verbs, you don't hear something weird, but when you see them spelled here, you see that something happens with the spelling from one vowel in the infinitive form to two vowels in the stem. Well, if you want to learn more about why that is, and also there are some other spelling rules when conjugating verbs, then I would advise you to watch this video because it's too much to go into that right now. And we also call them ik form because they go with ik. Ik fiets, ik eet, ik drink, ik loop. And these forms also go with je en jij when je en jij is behind the verb. Only in that case. So for example in a question, fiets jij, wat eet jij, or wat drink jij, or waar loop jij naartoe? Okay, so this is only for je en jij when they are behind the verb. When they are in front of the verb, then something happens. We add a T to the stem. So then it becomes je or jij fietst, je or jij drinkt, je or jij eet, je or jij loopt. And also all the other singular forms, so u, hij, zij, ze, het, or a name, they all get this form, stem plus a T. And that is when it's in front of the verb or behind the verb. Then it doesn't matter anymore. So for example, de man fietst, fietst de man. You see, the man is in front of it, the man is behind of it. Both, they have an extra T. Fietst. De man fietst. Fietst de man. De kat eet. Wat eet de kat? Here we see that ate doesn't get an extra T. Because the stem was also ate. And this is also ate with one T. And that is in Dutch because, yeah, it already has a T. Doesn't need a second T. Then a name. Maria drinkt. Wat drinkt Maria? Or, for example, hij met loopt. Hij loopt. Waar loopt hij naartoe? So these were sentences, first of all, very short. Second of all, with only one verb. But sometimes we have two or even more verbs in a sentence. And what happens then? This is also going to be very, very, very important because Dutch differs a lot from English, for example, in what we're going to look at now. So when do we get a second verb? For example, if we want to say something about the future and we have to add gaan to the sentences, or if we add a modal verb, in Dutch we call this een modaal werkwoord. We have five modal verbs. If you want to learn those modal verbs and practice with them, that is this video. Today we're going to just look at one, which is willen. And willen means to want, not will. So we're going to add gaan and willen to the sentences that we used before. And the verb that was conjugated before then turns into the infinitive and goes to the end of the sentence. So for example, we had de man fietst. Let's make a little bit longer sentence. De man fietst naar Amsterdam. That is present tense. Now we want to make it future tense by adding gaan. Then gaan is inserted in the spot where now is fietst. And fietst goes to the end of the sentence and turns into the infinitive. De man gaat naar Amsterdam fietsen. Okay, so this is very important. The infinitive or the second verb or more verbs, they go to the end of the sentence. So we would not say de man gaat fietsen naar Amsterdam. Then we had de kat eet. Let's make it de kat eet alleen vis. Now we want to insert willen, want, and that goes into the second spot of the sentence where now ate is, and ate turns into the infinitive and goes to the last spot of the sentence. De kat wil alleen vis eten. Yes, so you see, eten is the infinitive, it's at the end, and wil is at the second spot. And wil, by the way, is an exception that you see it doesn't have a T. Yeah, modal verbs sometimes have a little bit different conjugations. So it's not de kat wilt alleen vis eten. No, de kat wil alleen vis eten. Then we had the short sentence Maria drinkt. Let's turn that into Maria drinkt geen koffie. So now let's insert wil again. Maria wil geen koffie drinken. And the last sentence was hij loopt. Let's say hij loopt naar zijn werk. That's the present tense. Let's make it into the future tense again with gaat. Hij gaat naar zijn werk lopen. Okay, I think this is pretty clear now, right? So the conjugated verb is at the second spot and the infinitive is at the end. And sometimes we even have more than one infinitive and they all go to the end. For example, de man zou naar Amsterdam willen gaan fietsen. Yes, let's not make it too complicated for now, but let's look at another kind of example that we have more than one verb. That's for example in the perfect tense. And in Dutch we call this het perfectum or de voltooide tijd. When we make a normal sentence, a main sentence like we did before, these were all main sentences. In Dutch we call this een hoofdzin. So we can make this again, make a normal main sentence, then either hebben or zijn goes to the second spot of the sentence and the past participle goes to the last spot of the sentence in most cases. In Dutch we call past participle een voltooid deelwoord. So let's make the 4 sentences from before into the perfect tense just to show you this. For example, de man fietst naar Amsterdam. De man is naar Amsterdam gefietst. So not de man is gefietst naar Amsterdam. De man is naar Amsterdam gefietst. De kat eet vis. De kat heeft vis gegeten. Maria drinkt geen koffie. Maria heeft geen koffie gedronken. Hij loopt naar zijn werk. Hij is naar zijn werk gelopen. So we don't go into detail right now because if you're a beginner, maybe this is a little bit too much. It's just to show you that this is the same principle, like one verb at the second spot of the main sentence and the other one at the end, not next to the conjugated verb. That's not possible in Dutch in a main sentence. If you want to learn more about the perfectum, that is possible in this video or of course in the Big Fat Dutch Verbs course. Until now we saw that each time the conjugated verb was at the second spot in these main sentences. But sometimes it can be in the first. For example, if you ask a yes or no question, then it can be in the first spot. Fietst de man naar Amsterdam? Ja of nee? Or gaat de man naar Amsterdam fietsen? Then you see that gaat is at the first spot. But fietsen now is the infinitive, it's at the last. Or is de man naar Amsterdam gefietst? So again, conjugated verb at the first spot and the past participle at the last. What is not possible though in Dutch is that in a main sentence the conjugated verb is at the third spot. That is not possible. For example, if someone asks, when is the man going to bike to Amsterdam? And you want to respond emphasizing that he's going tomorrow, you can say, tomorrow the man is going to bike to Amsterdam. Yeah, so is, going is the conjugated verb here at the third spot. To bike, yeah, is next to it. And they're just happily standing there, all being perfectly normal in English. So this is just a perfect sentence. Nothing wrong with it. If we translate this literally word by word into Dutch, it will be the following. Morgen, de man, gaat, so is going to bike, will be gaat fietsen naar Amsterdam. Well, we already know fietsen should be at the end, so morgen, de man, gaat naar Amsterdam fietsen. This is not possible. It is not possible that gaat is in the third spot right now. No, gaat has to be in the second one in Dutch. This is very, very important to know. So it would be, morgen gaat de man naar Amsterdam fietsen. So we have inversion now of the verb and the subject. In Dutch we call this inversie, when they swap places. So this is really important to remember. And I made a video about this, about the word order in Dutch. I made 2 videos about it actually, this one and this one. So watch these, one of them or both, if you want to learn more about that. So these were some rules for main sentences, for hoofdzinnen. But for embedded sentences, for subordinate clauses, in Dutch we call this bijzinnen, it is completely different again. So now you think, oh, okay, I finally understand the rules. And then you have to forget about these rules again if you want to make an embedded sentence, a subordinate clause, een bijzin. What is een bijzin? That is a sentence that cannot be on its own. It is always dependent on another sentence. And what happens in these sentences is that the verb or all the verbs go to the end. For example, ik denk dat de man naar Amsterdam fietst. So, dat de man naar Amsterdam fietst, this is the subordinate clause. This one is dependent on the main clause, ik denk. You cannot only say dat de man naar Amsterdam fietst. It has to be embedded in something. I think that he is biking to Amsterdam. Yeah? So you see, fietst now is at the last spot. We can also say, ik denk dat de man naar Amsterdam gaat fietsen. So both verbs at the end. Or, ik denk dat de man naar Amsterdam is gefietst. Or, ik denk dat de man naar Amsterdam zou willen gaan fietsen. So it doesn't matter how many verbs that you have in a subordinate clause, they go to the end. In most cases, there are some exceptions, but we won't go into that now. But if you put them at the end, you're always correct. There are many different kinds of subordinate clauses. I made videos about that. I made even a whole course about different kinds of sentence structures and also different kinds of subordinate clauses. That's called the Dutch sentence structure course. So also, if you're interested in that, check the link in the description. Because yeah, actually verbs and sentence structure are also kind of linked, of course. And for now, we're gonna leave it like this. I just wanted to give you an overview of the principles of Dutch verbs, the names for them, where they are placed in the sentence. And now you can just look at the other videos if you want and learn more about it. Or you can check the Big Fat Dutch Verbs course, for example, if you want to learn more and practice more with Dutch verbs, all different kinds of them. And if you are a beginner and you think, well, this was super interesting and I want to learn more about Dutch in general, not only about the verbs, then you can also check out my Dutch for Beginners course. So you can check out my online school and learn more Dutch with me in general as well, if you would like that. And as always, I have a little bit of homework for you guys here. I've written down 3 sentences with verbs. And you can tell me for each sentence if it is the infinitief, the stam, of the persoonsvorm. And sometimes it can be 2 of these things. So, the first sentence is, jullie kijken deze video. So what is kijken in this sentence? Then the second sentence, wat gaan jullie straks kijken? Wat is kijken in this sentence? Wat gaan jullie straks kijken? And the third sentence is, ik kijk in de camera. What is kijk in this sentence? Well, thank you so much, my dear Dutchies-to-be, for watching this video and for learning Dutch with me, and also for always liking my videos, sharing them, subscribing. As you can see, I almost have 100,000 followers, and this makes me so happy to know that so many of you are learning Dutch with me or just watching these for fun, because there are also some Dutch people just watching for fun. Thank you for that. I wish you all a great day. I see you soon in the next video.